Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, April 28th, 2016, for our webinar on online communication strategies and suicide prevention. My name is Chris Maxwell, and I'm coordinator of member engagement for the Lifeline. And presenting today, we will have Frances Gonzalez, who is the Assistant Director of Communications with the Lifeline and MHA. Is that correct, Frances?
Yes, as well as a disaster distress helpline.
Great. So without further ado, because we're running a little bit behind, I'll let Frances go ahead and get started, and we will listen closely.
Great, thank you. So this presentation was originally presented during the Online Communication Strategies and Suicide Prevention workshop at AAS in March. So what we're going to hopefully cover in this, in the learning objectives, is Chris. Chris is going to control the slides. One, why a strong presence in the digital space is essential and ideal for suicide prevention resources and messaging. Basically a fancy way of saying why should you be online. Secondly, how to identify prevention opportunities and build sensitive but universal messaging with strong calls to action. That means for us, how do you write messaging that will reach the audience that you need to reach? And three, once you have that community that you've built and that you're reaching with the proper messaging, how do you maintain that community with all the sensitivities for the specific needs of suicide prevention in particular? So first we'll talk about why you should be online. So there's a handy chart on the next slide saying that this is from the Pew Research Center. This is only from 2015, so you can see that the numbers are probably up. So the percentage of all American adults and internet-using adults who use at least one social networking site. So you can see that there's a sharp increase, and it's going to continue to increase. But what's really noticeable in this chart is that the number of adults goes up very sharply as well. So before, social media is mainly a kid's game, but now you can see that everybody uses at least one platform, and that number is going to increase in the future as well. So basically 85% of adults use the internet, 65% of adults use social media, 90% of young adults use social media, which comes as a surprise to absolutely no one. Women and men use social networking sites at comparable rates. I say comparable rates because they're not necessarily all on the same platforms, but they all use social media. Women are more likely to be on, for instance, Pinterest, while men are more likely to use Facebook. Now, this is the part that is really interesting. So 60% of patients that utilize digital health records said that the information they found online affected a decision about how to treat an illness or condition. So people that are used to having some kind of their health care managed online, whether that's through a web portal, whether that's through web medical records, or getting emails from their doctors, 60% of those people say that the research that they do online affects what they decide to do about their health. That means that people are expecting that the information that they find online is accurate. They're using the internet as their main source of information, and those are the kinds of people that we have to reach. And having a strong web presence, having a strong social media presence will help you reach those people. So why should the Lifeline talk to you about this? So to toot our own horn, we have over 2 million website visitors annually. This is slightly incorrect, but we have one of the largest social media audiences in the field. I'm sorry about that. We have over 200,000 Facebook fans and over 40,000 Twitter followers. We have partnerships with leading social media companies that we'll talk about shortly, and we are constantly refining and developing new suicide prevention messaging that we hope to create more opportunities for all the centers and the general public to participate in as well. So we'll discuss that later on too. So all of the messaging for the Lifeline comes down through three key messages. Every piece of material, every print, every digital message comes through with these three key messages. One, that suicide is preventable, is demonstrated through stories of hope and recovery. So we like to share stories. People who have been through things, people who can speak to the audience that we need to reach, and who can share the message that these things are not inevitable. Next is the Lifeline second key message, which is that there's something you can do to prevent suicide, which is really a message that is well adapted for the online audience. So individuals can take action in suicide prevention, whether that's through organizations, whether that's through individual action, whether that's through a lot of other means. So people online are actually looking to become activists, as you've seen from any hashtag campaign that's ever happened. And the internet is actually primed for individual action. So this key message used with the first key message is really great for campaigns, which we'll discuss shortly. And then the third key message is that crisis centers are essential resources and partners in all local and regional suicide prevention efforts. So what we want to do is we want to highlight that the Lifeline is that network of crisis centers that are crucial and that provide local resources that can benefit communities. So how do we do this moving forward? And also currently we try to support crisis centers with resources like this, but also to show people the work of the crisis centers and how they can help as well. So we're going to talk about 4 different strategies for building a digital presence. All of these will feed into each other, and you'll see that as we go through them that they actually build upon each other as well. So the first thing that we talk about is one of the basic principles of digital marketing, which is building a digital ecosystem. So this chart illustrates that there is a home base in the center, and that radiating out from that home base are several what they call outposts. So what this strategy discusses is that there should be a central hub for all of your information, for all of your presence as an organization. So that typically is a website. It doesn't have to be. But the benefits of having a home base as a website is that, as you probably have experienced in social media in your own lives, you can't really get into nuance in 140 characters, but you can in a website. That's where all of your materials can live. That's where you can add information, and that's where you can send people to get information about you. So these outposts that radiate, you don't need 10 of them like in this graph, but every other piece of communication is designed to feed people back into your home base where they can learn more about what you're talking about. So e-newsletters, for instance, Facebook, Twitter, all of those items are messages that you send out that let people know what you're offering and what resources you're offering, and that link back in some way at some point to your home base. So what are the benefits of doing this? So one, this encourages all of us to see digital strategy as this holistic, inclusive approach. So it's not enough to say that, yeah, we need a Facebook page, we need a Twitter page. This actually forces you to ask the question of why. So you have a home base, all of your materials are here. What is the platform that works best for all of you? What is the platform that will best communicate the messages and share the resources that you need? Typically that is Facebook and Twitter, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. If you're looking for younger audiences, for instance, you might be better off on Instagram. Or if your resources bank has a lot of pictures and infographics, then Instagram works for you as well. If it's a lot of print materials, then you might want to look at Tumblr or Facebook, where those kinds of links tend to perform really well. As we mentioned earlier, websites provide a bank of key resources aimed at your target audience. So most websites are very easily built, and they are supportive of media, of text, of links. And the longer a website lives, the higher it comes up in Google search results. So the internet actually encourages you to have a home base and to build upon it consistently. As we mentioned earlier, social media provides those supporting resources that drive people back to your home base. Because you're creating a home base with a lot of radiating outposts, users should experience consistency of tone, messaging, and resources. There should not be any surprises. If they click on a link that they have on your Twitter feed, they should know that the kind of material that they're getting is, one, what you've promised, and two, written in the same tone and voice that inspire them to click on that in the first place. And finally, and this is very important, this helps you define your metrics for success. What are you trying to do online? Are you trying to disseminate resources? Are you trying to build an active community? All of those items will determine what kind of outposts you build, what kind of home base you build, and also will help you determine what is working for you and what is not. If you're trying to build an online community, for instance, then a low number of engagement is going to be something you're going to want to tackle, and a high traffic metric to your website is going to be less important for you. So building a digital ecosystem forces you to sort of identify what matters to you and what doesn't matter to you, so you can use your resources accordingly. Great. So the Lifeline has some examples of this. So it's currently undergoing a redesign, but there are some aspects here that we are retaining and that we're actually very proud of. One is our homepage. So because we want the website to be emblematic of our 3 key messages, and because our target audience is people who may be in crisis, the first thing that you tend to see is this huge sign that talks about how a person can act. Our Be the One-Two campaign that we'll discuss shortly encourages individual action and is one of the first things that you see on there. Next, you'll see at the bottom, it's information for people that would like to call. These are the kinds of comments that you get we get most frequently, and because we encourage people to call at all times, we want them to have all that information at their fingertips about why they should call, who should call, and what happens when they do call, to try to quickly establish that this is something that they can do and to answer those questions, which are the most frequent ones that we find in our communities as well. Next is we want to be inclusive. So we have in our homepage, we have a section that talks about where you can get specific help for the group that you're in, whether that's veterans, young adults, resources for bullying, and materials in Spanish. That is on our homepage too, because we want people to know that these are materials, one, that are available, and that two, we are an inclusive site. And then to the right of that, this is something that's a little not on the homepage, but once again illustrating that we want people to be able to spread the word that suicide is preventable and to take action. We have materials and resources throughout the site that we encourage people to share and disseminate. So for instance, people can download our Lifeline logos. We have guidelines for sharing those logos and kits for people to take action if they like. See, another example of a resource, how can a safety plan help? This is actually a very popular page on our website, which is indicative of those metrics of success. We want people to visit our resources, so knowing that there's a high traffic to pages that talk about items like how a safety plan can help shows us that this is what our audience is looking for and that these are the kind of pages that we need to keep building in the future. Great. So once you have identified what you need for your digital ecosystem and your home base, how do you create messages for your outposts? That's creating sensitive messaging. There are these 4 characteristics that I think are really key in doing so. One, it's important for you to cater your messaging language to your target audience. Are you hoping to reach clinicians? Are you hoping to reach those at risk? Are you hoping to reach youth? All of those things will matter in how you talk to them. Authenticity is the currency of the internet. And if you are inauthentic, if you are putting the wrong message out to the wrong group of people, it will not work. So alongside messaging is the resources. Center your messages on resources that appeal most to your audience. This is where your metrics will come in handy. Does your audience like infographics? Do they want links to papers? All of those things will be important for you to determine. And of course, determining successful messaging benchmarks. Once again, are you hoping to get people to your site? Are you hoping to create a community? In which case on social media, if you're hoping to create a community, engagement numbers are more important. If you're hoping to drive people to your site, getting people to click on a link is going to be more important. And all of those things are going to be influenced by what kind of language you write. At the same time, all of the same sensitivities that apply when discussing mental health in real life apply online. All of the language that we use, all of the things that you avoid when you're speaking to an individual who might be at risk are all items that you have to take into account when you're crafting messages, because you have no idea who exactly you're reaching. The great thing and also the worst thing about social media is that your messages go out to the universe. So you have to craft them with the understanding that there's a potential for a lot of people to see this, and people who are at risk who might be able to see this as well. So we have some examples of the Lifeline's messaging on their social media channels. We do several different types of resources. The first one you can see on the left, is a graphic with a quote. These have proven to be very popular on our pages, so we do them fairly regularly. So this one says, struggling with suicidal thoughts doesn't make you weak or selfish. Every day that you keep fighting is a victory. And then, of course, it says the Lifeline and our URL on there because we want people to visit that as well. The goal for this message wasn't necessarily to get visits to our page, because if you've ever used Facebook, images don't have links attached to them. But we're hoping to get people to share. So as you can see at the bottom, the reach of that post performed fairly well, with over 600,000 people sharing that material. What we also do is we share resources to drive people back to either the site or to encourage them to share one of our key messages, which in this case on the right is to spread the word that suicide is preventable and that you can act. So the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Toolkit of warning signs and other materials is one of the banks of resources that we like to share. Another type of message that we do is articles. So positive articles that relay stories of hope and recovery. For instance, this was a Washington Post article that was very popular about in March that you might have seen in the past. I only know two things for sure: depression lies, and I will tell the truth. These are the stories from people who have been affected that we like to share, and also we like to stay on the pulse of what's popular online, what's really resonating with that audience as well. And then, of course, we also like to share materials that Lifeline staff have been a part of. So the National Council magazine, Dr. John Draper, who's the director of the Lifeline, had an article featured on that as well. So that is another resource, this one for clinicians, that we like to disseminate as well. So you have sensitive messaging. Now we talk about campaigns. So what is a campaign? For the Lifeline's definition of a campaign, it is a series of specific, united messages that go out over a distinct period of time with a very specific goal. So for us, this is an example of our most successful campaign ever, which is called Be the One Too. This was a campaign that went out over a National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in September. This is a campaign that illustrated the key message, the first key message and the second key message, one, that suicide is preventable, and two, that you can take action to prevent suicide. So what this campaign encouraged people to do was to share infographics and materials, to encourage individuals to be the one to take action if they see someone struggling in their own lives, and also to educate the general public on how to do so, and two, the significance of doing so. So that was a series of 5 steps that individuals could take. So you have 2 examples of it here, which is one, keep them safe, and the next one, which is to follow up, which was the final step. And then you can see underneath the educational aspect of it. If your friend is thinking about suicide, ask them if they also thought about how they would do it. One, educating people, telling them to share this material and encouraging them to be the one to take action in their lives is a message that resonated fantastically with our audience because, one, it has the educational benefit because people are following the Lifeline because they're interested in these materials, but two, it gives the message of individual action and empowerment that resonates very well online. So here's another summary of that. It was a month-long Facebook and Twitter campaign, and by the end of the month, all the Facebook posts for the month had a total reach of over 7 million. And the best performing Facebook post had a total reach of 2 million in October 2015, and the best tweet had over 66,000 impressions. This has been the high watermark for the Lifeline so far, and is something that we realized has taught us a lot of lessons. One, that lesson about empowerment, and then two, that lesson about finding ways to break down resources into understandable pieces as well. So we've decided that this is something that we're going to continue doing and learning from in the future. So another campaign that we worked on was called the Season of Self-Care, which was a December campaign. This was a different kind of campaign in that it was targeted specifically for to drive people to the Lifeline website. So it was designed to help people that might be struggling throughout the holidays. So every day we posted one self-care tip throughout the month of December. As you can see that the shape of these graphics is different than the ones for the previous campaign. That was done intentionally. The previous campaign was a sharing campaign, so that we didn't need people to visit the site for. So they are built in the square shape that is best suited, for instance, for Facebook and for Twitter. These are half that size because these were link images where we would post the link to the page that we wanted people to visit and then update the image attached with one of the new self-care tips. We encourage people to take a look at that tip, to add their own tips, and to visit the full list and see the whole list of tips on our site. So to recap that, the December campaign is designed in a calendar style to encourage regular website visits and spur community conversation. So the post had a total reach of 5 million, or almost 6 million by December 31st on Facebook, and a significant number of clicks. What we also like to check, too, is how long did people stay on the page? Did they read the entire list? Did they click and go, oh no, and then disappear? All of that matters in determining what kind of content people like. Okay. So the third strategy, you've built up a website with a full bank of resources. You've figured out what makes your audience tick and how to connect with them online. How do you grow and manage that community, especially when it's one that's specifically talking about suicide and prevention? Yes. So any expansion into a digital platform with interactive components requires diligent and regular moderation. It doesn't matter if it's a blog, if it's a Facebook account, if it's an Instagram account. Anything where people are able to leave comments or address other members in the community or address you requires some kind of guideline. I encourage that everybody who creates guidelines include a variety of messaging and scenarios. So come up with protocols to handle triggering materials, to handle at-risk individuals, to handle requests for additional resources, and to handle reports of issues. The Lifeline has protocols for all of these items. We manage internally a lot of our social media communities, but our Facebook community is actually large enough that the Palm Beach 211 Center moderates that as a full-time position, 24 hours. Every 3 hours, they are required to log in and to address any posts that come up, especially for anything that falls within those 4 categories. So a lot of the things in growing a community, when you answer comments, when you address concerns, carry over from creating sensitive messaging. Once again, that idea of having a consistent voice is very important. So you need a consistent tone and you need personalized engagement. So what the Lifeline does is if you post a comment, we address specifically that comment. We'll answer you the way you would if it were a regular conversation and in the same tone of voice that we write in if we were writing a post. We have the established escalation protocol. If somebody is at risk, what are the immediate steps that we take? What do you do when someone does this? What do you do when someone does this? And it's a bank of protocols that we are consistently adding to on a regular basis. What we also like to do in comments is provide referrals to relevant resources either on the home base or on trusted third parties. A lot of people ask additional questions. So, hey, I really liked your article. How do I find more information on this? Great. You want to encourage that, and you want them to feel that they can come to you with those questions. So providing more resources is essential. I personally would prefer that people that, at least on the Lifeline end, post resources that exist on the Lifeline site, once again, re-emphasizing that whole home-based tactic. But what matters more is that you're posting the right resource. So if it doesn't exist on your home base, one, that means you have to build it, but two, send them to the right third party. What is also important is that you have clearly posted rules for acceptable content and behavior. On our Facebook page, if you click on the About section and you learn more about us, there's a strictly outlined, very clearly outlined set of information about what the Facebook page is, what the Facebook page is not, and what we will allow and what we won't allow. That's very important for maintaining your community, and also gives you the leeway to moderate the community within those guidelines as necessary. So for instance, we have clearly marked on our Facebook page that we do not provide crisis counseling over social media. So anytime somebody asks for something that seems like they want direct counseling over messages, we make it very clear that no, that's not something that we do, and we've made that clear from the start. If someone posts spam, that's in the rules that you're not allowed to do that. So that gives us the leeway to delete anything that falls under the non-acceptable content. What we also have is, again, metrics for success. What kind of response rate do you want for your comments? Is it important that you address them right away? Or is it okay that you wait a couple of hours to answer? All of these metrics for success will help you determine how well you're moderating your community. These interactive closed-loop metrics, I call them. So what is a successful interaction on your social media platforms? Between the first moment that someone sends you a message and that last moment where somebody says thank you, how many messages does that take? How long does it take for you to answer them? All those things are things we like to measure for ourselves. So as you see, we have some examples of types of messages that we've received on our posts. So this one is actually someone seeking help for themselves. So as you can see, when we address that person directly, we tag their name in it. And then we also refer them to resources. We don't try to counsel them directly on our page. We refer them to call the Lifeline. All right, next. So this is somebody who is a loss survivor and is sharing their life experience. So once again, as you can see, we've catered the message to address that specifically. So we mention their name. We say that it sounds like you're having a difficult time coping with this situation, and then letting them know that the Lifeline is available. We do try to let people know in almost every message that the Lifeline is available for them, because that is something that is a huge message of ours that we always want to spread awareness about, is the Lifeline's phone number. So something else is this is one that is another example of catering the message specifically to who you're talking to. I think this was a comment that was on a post that said, like, hey, if you're in trouble, if you want someone to talk to, call us. And the comment was no, because I don't want to talk on the phone. In that case, we provide the right resource for that comment, letting them know that we offer chat-based services 24/7, and then providing the link to that. So one, they don't have to look it up, and two, they can go directly from that to the appropriate resource. So this is the fourth strategy. This is on top of basically all the previous three that you are constantly working on and refining. You've built your home base, you've identified the audiences that you want, you've built a really strong and robust community that you're managing. How do you reach more people? Expanding reach is an organic extension of that holistic strategy. So what that means, you're always going to be looking for new ways to reach your target audiences, especially with the resources that we're providing. How do you do that? You utilize the feedback and metrics from all the previous strategies that we've talked about before and use them to identify your new needs, your audiences, and your actions. Do people keep asking you the same questions over and over again about resources, are they always asking you about one particular question? Are they always looking for one resource? Are they always asking you questions about other groups of people? Like sometimes we'll have comments, for instance, on our youth blog saying like, hey, these stories are great, but this isn't my age group. And then now we've identified that people want to have these stories, but they also want it for their own cohort as well. So that has helped us to identify the new needs, audiences, and actions. If we are getting clicks to a page, but people aren't staying, why? Is it because the information on that page isn't relevant? Is it because we're messaging the wrong group of people who don't necessarily need that page? Or is it something else? All of those things, some of this is going to be a guessing game and some of it will be experimentation. But the nice thing about the internet is that it encourages experimentation. So what you want to do is you want to identify opportunities and partnerships to reach your key audiences where they are. Every single organization has a strength and at least one weakness. You can partner with an organization that can help you reach the group of people that you need. It might be a local organization, it might be a youth organization, it might be somebody who has great reach but not the resources that you have. All of those groups will be interested in working with you. All those groups will be interested in getting the word out about their messages and sharing networks. And something else you want to do is also build opportunities to unite digital and IRL in real life impact. One of the big critiques of doing any sort of work on social media, especially in this kind of field, is that it's hard to measure your rate of success. It's hard to measure if you've saved lives. It's hard to measure if the resource that you provided is the exact right resource. But there are opportunities to change that. The web is something that if you build strategies with that in mind, with uniting digital action with real-world impact, you can have, one, the measurements that you need, but two, also the impact that we're all looking for. That might be something as simple as sign this petition to have an impact on, say, like a law that's coming out or a resource that you want disseminated, or show up to this particular event that you promote online, but it's an event that takes place in a real location. Finding ways to bridge that gap between digital and real life impact is, I think, the next step in this kind of communication and strategy building. So how is the Lifeline doing this? Well, we're constantly looking for new ways to, one, refine our messaging, but also find new people that we can work with. So one of the groups that we worked with is Google and Siri. They're automated, and Apple for their automated voice assistants. That's Siri, that's Cortana, that's Alexa, all of those groups. So we have the top search results, for instance, what people commonly search for or ask questions about when they are looking to when they're looking for information. So top 10 ways to die, how to make suicide look accidental, ways to take your life, should I die, painless ways to die. All of these variations are things that Google has noted that people search for, that they find concerning. So if someone asks these questions of their voice assistants, we've worked with Apple, we've worked with Google to get the resources that they need in the right voice and the right tone that they need. So as you can see, they have Siri says that, if you're thinking about suicide, you may want to speak with someone at the Lifeline. Can I call them for you? Google says something similar as well. I checked Alexa recently, which is the Amazon voice assistant, and she does the same thing, which is fantastic because we didn't even ask for that one. This is another example of another way to reach people. So that way previously was reaching people through their smartphones. This way is through search engines, either through desktop, through mobile, anywhere that people are using Google. Google is still one of the #1 search engines, second to, weirdly enough, YouTube. So if you search any of those previous query terms, what pops up is a box at the very top of all of our search results that shows the Lifeline phone number, the website, and lets people know that this number is available 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. And then next is our Facebook partnership. This is a partnership that's been underway since, I think I want to say 2011. But this is Facebook's way. We work with them to create their safety center, but we also work with them on ways to support individuals who might be at risk. So you can click on someone's profile. Somebody's posting messages that an individual is concerned about. That person can go to that person's profile, click the word report, and then say, like, what would you like to do? And one of those things is, I want to help this person. And then after that, Facebook walks you through those needs. On the next slide, you'll see that it says, like, what do you think this person needs help with? And then following that, what you can do. So one, offer a message of support, see tips from suicide prevention experts that drives you to their safety center, and also to get support for yourself as well. We worked very closely with Facebook to come up with these messages and also to find the best ways to send those messages out. So these are the examples of the messages that they're talking about. So your post makes me think you might be going through something difficult. You can also contact the helpline. Hey, this post makes me think this person is going through something difficult. What do you think? And that's a message you can send to somebody else as well. Because we found that it's not that people don't want to help, it's just that they don't have the words to ask for it or to speak about it. And that's part of the educational aspect too, and the individual action aspect as well, is that we want to provide these resources wherever people are and wherever we can find them, which in this case is through their mobile phones, through the social media sites that are most popular, through places where people search for resources, such as Google. Right, so this is from their safety center as well, sharing resources and providing support, and you can see that the Lifeline phone number is there too. All right, so that's it. We went through that pretty quickly, so that leaves us some time for some Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to ask me.
I want to remind everyone, too, that if you do have questions and you're not on the phone line, that you can enter those questions into the chat box down at the bottom of the webinar window.
All right.
Okay, well, if we don't have any questions, Frances, do you have an email that people can contact you with questions?
Yes, you can send an email to communications@mhaofnyc.org. So that's communications@mhaofnyc.org.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Frances, for giving us all this information. I think this is spectacular and hopefully helps out a lot of people.
Hey, anytime.
All right. Everybody have a nice day.